The heater had been broken for 3 days, and Sarah Chen was pretty sure she was going to freeze to death serving coffee. She pulled her thin cardigan tighter around her shoulders as she wiped down the empty counter of Miller's Roadside diner for the third time in an hour. Her breath came out in visible puffs in the frigid air. Outside, the worst blizzard in 20 years was burying everything under mountains of snow, and the wind sounded like it was trying to tear the roof off. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and Sarah was completely alone. The cook, Jerry, had abandoned ship 3 hours ago when the lights started flickering. The manager, Mr. Hendricks, hadn't even bothered to show up after the weather service issued the blizzard warning. That left Sarah, 26 years old, working 2 jobs and 3 months behind on rent, to hold down the fort in a diner that barely had enough customers to keep the lights on even on good days. Tonight definitely wasn't a good day. The power had been cutting in and out since sunset. Every few minutes, the lights would dim, the ancient coffee maker would sputter, and Sarah would hold her breath, waiting to be plunged into darkness. Outside, the thermometer read -15 degrees, and her beat-up Honda Civic was already buried under 2 feet of snow. She wasn't going anywhere until morning. If she survived that long, Sarah checked her phone for the 100th time. No missed calls, no texts, no miracle job offers that would get her out of this frozen wasteland. Just a weather alert that made her stomach clench. Blizzard warning extended through 6 a.m. Travel impossible. Seek shelter immediately. She was seeking shelter. She was trapped in it. That's when she heard the engines cutting through the howling wind. Through the frost-covered windows, Sarah saw the headlights first. 5 beams of light moving slowly through the whiteout, like ghosts emerging from the storm. The sound of engines grew louder, a deep rumbling that vibrated through the diner's thin walls. Motorcycles. 5 of them. In a blizzard, Sarah's blood turned to ice water. She'd seen enough crime shows to know that nothing good happened when bikers showed up at isolated diners in the middle of the night. Especially not during storms when there were no witnesses, no help coming, no escape. The bikes pulled into the empty parking lot, their engines dying one by one until only the wind remained. 5 men dismounted, all wearing heavy leather jackets coated with ice and snow. They moved stiffly, like the cold had frozen their joints solid. Sarah's first instinct was to run to the back office, lock the door, and call 911. But her phone had no signal. The storm had knocked out the cell towers hours ago. The landline was down too. She was on her own. The bikers approached the front door slowly, not aggressively. The tallest one, clearly their leader, walked with purpose but not menace. When he reached the glass door, he knocked, not pounded, not demanded entry, just knocked like a normal customer. Through the frosted window, Sarah could see his face. Weathered, maybe 40 years old, with a gray beard covered in ice crystals. His eyes were blue and tired, and when he saw her standing behind the counter, he held up both hands in a gesture of peace. Please. She could barely hear him through the glass and wind. We just need to get warm. Sarah looked at these 5 men more carefully. They were shaking violently, their lips blue with cold. Ice hung from their beards and eyebrows. One of them was leaning heavily against another, barely able to stand. They weren't threatening her. They were dying. Her hand hesitated on the deadbolt. We're closed, Sarah called through the door, but her voice lacked conviction. Ma'am. The leader's voice was rough but respectful. I know how this looks. 5 bikers showing up in the middle of the night, but my brother here, he gestured to the man slumping against him. He's got hypothermia. We've been riding for 2 hours trying to find shelter. Every place we stopped turned us away. Sarah studied the man in question. His face was pale as paper, his eyes unfocused. He was in bad shape. Please. The leader continued. We're not here to cause trouble. We just need to get warm before. His voice broke slightly. Before we don't make it. Sarah's mind raced. These could be dangerous criminals using the storm as cover. They could be planning to rob her, hurt her. Worse. Every reasonable part of her brain screamed to keep that door locked. But Sarah had never been particularly reasonable. Growing up in foster care had taught her that sometimes the people who looked the most dangerous were just the most desperate. And she'd been desperate enough times to recognize it in others. The man with hypothermia was now being supported by two of his friends. His lips were moving, but no sound was coming out. Sarah made her choice. She unlocked the deadbolt. The five bikers entered like they were walking into a church, quietly, respectfully, grateful. The leader immediately guided his sick friend to the booth closest to the kitchen, where the broken heater at least provided some residual warmth. "Thank you," the leader said simply. "I'm Marcus. This is Tommy, Big Jim, Razor, and that's Danny." He pointed to the man with hypothermia. "Danny's been fighting this cold for an hour. We thought we'd lost him twice." Sarah nodded, keeping the counter between herself and them. "I'm Sarah. There's not much I can do. The heater's broken, the stove's electric, and the power keeps cutting out." "You open the door," Marcus said quietly. "That's more than anyone else would do." Sarah studied them in the diner's fluorescent light. Their leather jackets bore patches. Iron Saints MC with a skull and wings logo. Motorcycle Club. But they weren't acting like the criminals she'd expected. They were acting like people. "Coffee," she said suddenly. "I can make coffee. The gas burner still works. We don't have much money," Big Jim said apologetically. He was massive, probably 6'4", but his voice was gentle. "Storm caught us between paydays. Did I ask for money?" Sarah was already moving toward the coffee station. "Sit down before you fall down." As she prepared the coffee, Sarah snuck glances at her unexpected customers. They'd arranged themselves around Danny, who was slowly coming back to life in the relative warmth. Tommy, who looked to be the youngest, maybe 25, was rubbing Danny's hands to restore circulation. Razor, thin and wiry with intelligent eyes, was checking pulse points on Danny's neck. "He's coming around," Razor announced with relief. "Pulse is getting stronger." "Good," Marcus said. "Sarah, is there a back room where we could get him warmer? Away from the windows?" Sarah hesitated. The back room was behind the kitchen, isolated, where no one would hear her scream. But Danny's color was improving, and these men had just spent precious minutes focused entirely on their friend's welfare instead of scoping out the register. "Follow me," she said. The back room was cramped and cluttered with supplies, but it was warmer than the main dining area. Sarah found some clean dish towels and helped them get Danny settled on an old couch. "Mr. Hendricks used for his afternoon naps." "You've done this before," she observed, watching Razor methodically check Danny's extremities for frostbite. "Army medic," Razor explained without looking up. "Iraq, 2 tours. Saw plenty of cold injuries in the mountains." "And you?" Sarah asked Marcus. 20 years as a paramedic in Detroit. Retired last year. Marcus was helping Tommy remove Danny's wet boots. "We're not exactly the criminal masterminds people think we are." Sarah brought them the coffee, steam rising from 5 mismatched mugs. The bikers wrapped their hands around the warmth gratefully, and she watched some of the tension leave their shoulders. "What were you doing out in this storm?" she asked. "Funeral," Big Jim said quietly. "Lost a brother in Buffalo yesterday. Heart attack at 42. We rode up for the service, but the storm hit faster than the weather service predicted." "You rode motorcycles to Buffalo in winter?" Sarah couldn't hide her disbelief. "Only way we could afford to go," Tommy said. "Plane tickets, hotel rooms, we're not exactly rich. But when a brother dies, you show up, no matter what." Sarah felt something shift in her chest. These weren't criminals or thugs. They were just working men who'd risked their lives to honor a friend. "How long have you been riding in this?" she asked. 3 hours, Marcus said grimly. "Roads are getting worse. We were about to give up when we saw your lights." "Give up?" "Find somewhere to wait it out," Razor clarified. "Under an overpass, abandoned building, whatever." "Wouldn't be the first time." Sarah stared at him. "You were going to sleep outside? In this?" "Better than freezing on the road," Big Jim shrugged. "We've survived worse." "Not tonight," Sarah said firmly. You're staying here until the storm passes. Over the next few hours, as the storm raged outside and Danny gradually returned to normal, Sarah learned more about her unexpected guest than she'd learned about some people she'd known for years. Marcus had been a paramedic for 2 decades before a back injury forced him into early retirement. He joined the Iron Saints because they did volunteer work for veterans and organized charity rides for children's hospitals. Big Jim was a construction foreman who'd lost his house in a divorce but gained a brotherhood that had helped him rebuild his life. He sent half his paycheck to his ex-wife to support their 2 kids. Tommy was fresh, out of community college with a degree in automotive repair. The club had helped him find work when no one else would hire someone with their address and references. Razor, despite his intimidating name, was the gentlest of them all. He worked as an EMT and spent his weekends teaching first aid classes to anyone who'd listen. And Danny, once he could talk again, turned out to be a high school history teacher who'd joined the club after his wife died of cancer. The brotherhood had kept him from drinking himself to death. People see the leather and the bikes, and they make assumptions, Marcus said as they shared the last of the coffee around 3 a.m. We get refused service, kicked out of restaurants, followed by cops for no reason except how we look. But you keep wearing the leather, Sarah pointed out. Because it's who we are, Tommy said simply. We're not ashamed of being bikers. We're just tired of being treated like criminals. Sarah thought about that as she refilled their mugs with the last of the coffee. I almost didn't open the door. But you did, Marcus said. That makes you different. That makes me decent, Sarah corrected. That should be normal. Should be, Big Jim agreed. Isn't. Around 4 a.m., as Danny dozed on the couch and the others kept watch, Sarah found herself telling them things she'd never told anyone. About growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes where she was either ignored or worse. About aging out of the system at 18 with nothing but a high school diploma and a deep distrust of authority figures. About working 3 jobs to pay for community college, only to drop out when her appendix burst and the medical bills consumed her savings. About Mr. Hendricks, who paid her under minimum wage and made comments about her appearance that crossed every line. About the broken heater he refused to fix, the paychecks that bounced, the promises that never materialized. About being 3 months behind on rent with nowhere to go and no one to ask for help. Why do you stay? Razor asked gently. Because I don't have anywhere else to go, Sarah said simply. This job sucks, but it's a job. This place is freezing, but it's shelter. I learned a long time ago not to walk away from shelter. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, you got family? Had foster families. None that kept in touch. Friends? Sarah laughed bitterly. Hard to make friends when you work 16-hour days just to survive. What about dreams? Tommy asked. What did you want to be before all this? Sarah was quiet for so long, they probably thought she'd fallen asleep. Finally, a teacher. Like Danny. I wanted to teach elementary school. Help kids who grew up like I did. Why didn't you? College costs money. Student loans require credit history or co-signers. I had neither. Sarah shrugged. Dreams are luxury items. Ideal in necessities. The room fell silent except for the storm outside and Danny's steady breathing. Sarah, Marcus said finally, what if I told you that didn't have to be the end of the story? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sarah woke up on the floor of the back room at 7 a.m., covered by someone's leather jacket. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed by snow and ice. Sunlight streamed through the windows, making everything sparkle. The 5 bikers were gone. For a moment, Sarah wondered if she'd dreamed the whole thing. But there were 5 empty coffee mugs in the sink and a note on the counter written in Marcus's careful handwriting. Sarah, thank you for saving our lives. We won't forget your kindness. We're heading home, but we'll be back. The Iron Saints underneath the note were 5 $20 bills. $100 total. Sarah's hands shook as she counted it. That was more than she usually made in a week. She was staring at the clatter. Money when she heard the engines. At first, she thought the Iron Saints had returned. But this sound was different. Deeper. Louder. Much louder. Sarah walked to the front window and felt her knees go weak. The parking lot was filling with motorcycles. Not 5 this time. Dozens. They kept coming, streaming in from the highway like a mechanical river. Harleys, Indians, custom choppers, all gleaming in the morning sun. 50 bikes. 100. More. And they all bore the same patch. Iron Saints, MC. Sarah stood frozen behind the counter as bikers filled the diner. Not just men, women too. All wearing leather and patches. All moving with the same quiet respect Marcus and his friends had shown the night before. The crowd parted, and Marcus walked through, grinning from ear to ear. "Morning, Sarah. Hope you don't mind the company." "What? What is this?" Sarah's voice came out as a whisper. "This," Marcus gestured to the assembled crowd, "is the Iron Saints Motorcycle Club. All 5 chapters. Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. When word got out about what you did last night, everyone wanted to come say thank you. But there are so many of you." 312, said a woman with silver hair and kind eyes. "I'm Gloria, chapter president from Ohio. We drove all night to get here." Sarah looked around the packed diner. 300 bikers, all looking at her with something that took her a moment to recognize. Respect. "You saved our brothers," Gloria continued. "Danny was about 20 minutes from dying of hypothermia when you opened that door. In our world, that creates a debt. A debt I don't want," Sarah said quickly. "Too bad," Marcus laughed. "You've got it anyway, but maybe you'll like how we pay it back." He handed her an envelope. Sarah opened it with trembling hands and nearly fainted. It was a check for $50,000. "What is this?" "Emergency fund," Gloria explained. "Every chapter contributed. It's yours. No strings attached. Pay your rent, quit this job if you want, go back to school. Whatever you need." Sarah's vision blurred with tears. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" asked a young man with a Pittsburgh patch on his vest. "Because I didn't do anything special. I just opened a door." "You opened a door when everyone else slammed theirs shut," Gloria said firmly. "You saw 5 bikers in a storm and chose compassion over fear. That's not nothing, sweetheart. That's everything." The next few hours passed in a blur. The Iron Saints didn't just come to give Sarah money. They came to work. Someone had apparently done research on the diner overnight because they knew exactly what needed fixing. A team immediately went to work on the heater. Another group started repairing the roof leak that had been dripping into the back room for months. The broken freezer that Mr. Hendricks had been promising to fix next week for the past 6 months. Fixed in an hour by a biker who turned out to be a refrigeration specialist. The flickering lights that had been causing power issues, rewired by an electrician wearing a Harley-Davidson t-shirt. "Who's organizing this?" Sarah asked Marcus as she watched a crew install new insulation. "Gloria's husband, Pete. He's a general contractor. Soon as he heard your story, he started making calls." Marcus grinned. "Turns out bikers have all kinds of useful skills when we're not busy being stereotypes." Mr. Hendricks showed up around noon, clearly expecting to find his diner destroyed by a biker gang. Instead, he found it cleaner and more functional than it had been in years, packed with customers who were buying coffee and food from the now fully operational kitchen. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded. "Renovations," Sarah said calmly. "Free of charge." Hendricks' eyes bulged when he saw the crowd, the cash register ringing constantly, the repairs being made to his neglected property. "You can't just..." "Who authorized this?" "The lady who kept your business from freezing to death last night," Gloria said, appearing beside Sarah like a protective mother bear. "While you were home in your warm house. She was here working without heat to keep your doors open. And now her friends are fixing everything you've been too cheap to repair," added Pete, wiping grease from his hands. "Free labor. Free materials. I'd say thank you if I were you." Hendricks looked around at the thriving business, the satisfied customers, the obvious improvements to his property. Sarah could see the dollar signs adding up in his eyes. "Well," he said finally, "I suppose this is acceptable." "Glad you approve," Sarah said dryly. That evening, after the last customer had left and the Iron Saints had finished their work, Sarah stood in the transformed diner and cried. The heater worked. The lights were steady. The roof didn't leak. The freezer hummed quietly. Everything gleamed with fresh paint and polish. More importantly, the cash register held more money than the diner usually made in a month. "The Brotherhood takes care of its own," Marcus said, joining her by the window. "And you're ours now, whether you like it or not." "I don't understand why," Sarah said. "What I did wasn't heroic. It was basic human decency." "Exactly," Gloria said, appearing on Sarah's other side. "Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how many doors got slammed in our faces last night before we found yours?" Sarah thought about that. "How many?" 17, Tommy said. "We stopped at 17 places. Gas stations, convenience stores, even a couple other diners. All closed to us. Some literally locked their doors when they saw us coming," Big Jim added. "But you didn't," Razor said quietly. "You saw 5 half-frozen bikers, and your first thought was to help. That's not common, Sarah. That's special." Sarah looked around at the 300 faces watching her with warmth and acceptance. People who'd driven hundreds of miles just to say thank you. Who'd spent their own money and time to fix her workplace. Who'd invited her into their family based on one moment of kindness. "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus pulled out a leather jacket, similar to theirs but sized for her. Across the back, in careful stitching, it read, "Iron Saints MC, Sarah Chen, Sister of the Storm." "Now," he said, holding it out to her, "you decide if you want to be part of something bigger than yourself." Sarah stared at the jacket for a long moment. Accepting it would change everything. She'd go from being invisible, forgotten, struggling alone, to being part of something vast and protective and permanent. "What would be expected of me?" she asked. "Nothing you're not already doing," Gloria said. "Be kind. Help when you can. Show up for family." "Family?" "All of us." Marcus gestured to the assembled bikers. 300 brothers and sisters who'll have your back, no questions asked, for the rest of your life. Sarah thought about her lonely apartment, her empty bank account, her uncertain future. Then she thought about the past 24 hours. The warmth of community, the power of people caring about each other, the feeling of belonging somewhere. She took the jacket. The diner erupted in cheers. Engines revving outside, leather-clad arms pulling her into hugs from people who'd been strangers hours ago but felt like family now. "Welcome to the Iron Saints, sister," Gloria said, helping her into the jacket. It fit perfectly. 6 months later, Sarah Chen graduated from community college with a degree in early childhood education. The Iron Saints had not only paid her tuition, but had provided tutoring, study groups, and emotional support through every exam and paper. The diner, now co-owned by Sarah and completely renovated, had become an official stop on the Iron Saints routes. Bikers from across the country made pilgrimages to eat at Storm's Diner. The name the Brotherhood had given it in honor of the war night that started everything. Mr. Hendricks had tried to fire Sarah after realizing she was now too valuable to underpay. The Iron Saints had politely explained that this would be unwise. Hendricks had instead offered Sarah a partnership in the business, which she'd accepted on the condition that all employees receive fair wages and benefits. Sarah still worked at the diner, but now by choice rather than desperation. She'd been accepted to the State University's teaching program and would start in the fall, funded by the Iron Saints Education Fund, a scholarship program she'd helped establish for kids aging out of foster care. But the biggest change was simpler than any of that. Sarah was no longer alone. Every day, bikers stopped by, not for charity or obligation, but for family. They brought their kids, their grandparents, their friends. They shared stories, offered advice, celebrated successes, and mourned losses together. On the anniversary of the storm, all 5 original Iron Saints returned to the diner. Danny, fully recovered, and newly engaged to a nurse from the local hospital. Tommy, now running his own garage with backing from the club. Big Jim, reunited with his children thanks to legal help from biker lawyers. Razor, who'd started a first aid training program for at-risk youth. And Marcus, who'd become like a father to Sarah. Any regrets? Marcus asked as they sat in the booth where it all began. Sarah looked around the bustling diner, at the walls covered with photos of Iron Saints from across the country, at the customers who'd become friends, at the life she'd built from one moment of choosing kindness over fear. Just one, she said. What's that? Sarah smiled. I wish I'd opened that door sooner. Outside, the sound of motorcycles filled the air as more Iron Saints arrived for the anniversary celebration. The storm that had brought them together was long over, but the family it had created would last forever. And in a small diner on a forgotten stretch of highway, a former foster kid turned teacher wore her leather jacket with pride, serving coffee to anyone who needed warmth and proving every day that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply open the door. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.